The other day, one of my executive clients made a landmark observation. Wow, I made a mistake, he said. Oh, yeah? I responded. Oatmeal in the morning. Wow. You probably were craving cookies by midday, right? Yep. And donuts. Had a hard time stopping. Yeah, I responded. What you eat first thing or what your first meal is of the day really sets up your neurotransmitters for the entire day. We discussed some alternatives that fit with his lifestyle and how he can make sure that his first meal of the day is one that primes his brain, preps his emotions, and sets up his neurotransmitters and his body for energy and vitality throughout the day. Today, I want to talk about why a dogmatic diet approach doesn't work for sustained weight loss. How simple canned advice like eat less and exercise more tells you what to do, but not how to accomplish what you want. And why your previous strategies for dropping that extra body fat won't work in the long term unless you address the two most important aspects of nutrition. Now, something like oatmeal is not horrible for you, but when eaten at the wrong time, it can actually prime you to overeat. Now, with over 2 decades in health and fitness and working with NBA champions, Olympic athletes, and top executives from every sector, I found the biggest mistake people make is that they take a dogmatic diet approach or follow some sort of cookie cutter canned advice, thinking that it will be the silver bullet to get them the results that they're looking for. So, I want to tell you my personal story today. Several years ago, I was overweight. I was carrying extra belly fat. I had way too much fat in my love handle area and made me feel extremely uncomfortable. I had injured my knee. My elbow was giving me problems. My lower back was in pain. I had some sporadic anxiety. And one moment, I had an embarrassing panic attack when I was on the freeway on my way to a speaking engagement. So, what was I doing wrong? What led to this? Well, there were probably four things that I could really put my finger on. First, I was trying to follow something extreme, a dogmatic approach. You see, I grew up in health and fitness, believing that I needed to follow a clean eating and maybe even just a bodybuilding style of diet in order to get the results I was looking for. The second thing I was doing wrong is I really wasn't paying attention to the nutrients that were going into my body on a regular basis and how they were affecting me. Third, I was thinking that I needed to, quote, go all in and be strict because I didn't really know how to create long term sustained results in the areas of staying lean, reducing pain, and ultimately adapting to how my body needed to recover that as I was aging and the demands of a busy travel schedule were putting on me. Finally, I was trying to focus on too many things at once. So, what was happening? Well, I would oscillate from one extreme to another, but with very little result because the extremes were unsustainable. I ate somewhat healthy. I was conscious of what I was putting in my mouth, but I didn't really understand how my food was affecting my body fat, my muscle mass, my mental health, and really what it was doing to my pain. I felt frustrated because the pain seemed to come out of nowhere from time to time. My body over time got worse. I threw out my back more often and in even more painful ways. This limited my movement for weeks at a time. I got soft, I lost muscle, and I kept gaining fat. No matter what I tried, I told myself. I started to even believe that this was my destiny, that the dad bod was something I just had to get used to. That getting older was changing me. And unless I got and stayed ultra strict with my dogmatic diet approach, I would continue on the dad bod path. I kept gaining body fat and my body fat percentage went up. Because I have a small frame and I wore tailored suits, I could hide it pretty well. So whenever I mentioned how I felt to friends or colleagues, they just laugh it off and tell me that I didn't really have a good grasp on reality. I, quote, looked good to them, and I, quote, shouldn't worry about how I looked. This only made me feel more isolated and alone. The pain was the other thing that really got to me. It got worse, and it became something that was frankly unsustainable for me to continue to work out. My pain would shift from my elbow to my knee to my shoulder to my hip to my back. And whenever I would try to lift or do something in the gym, I would be blocked. Something kept stopping me. The pain in one area or another was limiting me. Even in my leisure activities, I couldn't get out and live a cool life like I wanted to. I was also not addressing how travel, my age, time zone change, the busy schedule, the long hours that I was working, how that was affecting me. And that the reality was I couldn't recover like I did in my 20s. I would sometimes eat like a child, although I was living in an adult body. I felt low energy, had acid reflux, sometimes had some irritable bowel, felt anxiety, and from time to time felt overwhelmed. Finally, I got extremely overwhelmed. I felt anxious and depressed. I felt hopeless, and I couldn't imagine myself making the changes that I wanted. I was also embarrassed because my body didn't reflect the high standard that I had for every other area of life. And what was really the icing on the cake was I kept telling myself that I, quote, knew better because I'd been in health and fitness for over a decade and a half at this point. So what changed? Well, eventually I stumbled across and created 4 principles of evolution. I'm going to give them to you here quick, and then we'll dive into each one. The first one is eat to evolve. Second, time it right, nutrition timing. Third, synergy success strategy. And finally, the priority principle. Let's dive into the first one, eat to evolve. I figured that I had to create a sustainable approach to nutrition, movement, and lifestyle. I knew that food and movement were much more than just eating clean and lifting heavy. So I adapted my program based on what my current needs and goals were. Every 2 to 3 months, I would sit down, reevaluate my training, my lifestyle, and my nutrition, and make sure that they were balanced to appropriately meet the demands of my lifestyle. I ate relative to my goals and my health and my energy and my vitality. Now, with my Eat to Evolve, I only had one restrictive rule on my diet and my nutrition, and that is this: I don't eat things that I know will harm me. For instance, I'm allergic to soy, so I have to stay far away from it as possible. I also don't eat super highly processed foods like McDonald's or other fast foods because of how it makes me feel later on. If it's going to harm me, I don't want to feel horrible afterwards, and I stay away from it. That's my number one restrictive rule that I have. Next was my time it right nutrition timing strategy. I figured out that over time, as I tested and adjusted nutrients and nutrient timing, how powerful this was for me. And what I've learned over the years is that this became even more powerful for my clients, especially my executive clients who were busy, who were traveling all the time, and who needed a strategy that would work to give them energy and vitality while also meeting their need to lose weight and gain strength. So I started tracking the food and how I felt when I ate it. I watched my energy, my recovery, and the overall results, and I adjusted it accordingly. I didn't focus and, as they say, major in minor things. I focused on the things that were the most important. For me, it was fat loss and energy, and making sure that as I lost fat and I gained muscle, that I didn't sacrifice my energy. You see, as a dad, I can't give up my energy that I want to invest with my kids. As a husband, I couldn't give up my energy that I wanted to invest with my wife. And as a business owner and an executive, I couldn't give up what I was doing for my clients and everybody that relied on me. Now, for all my clients, I start the same way that I do with myself. these two most important factors when it comes to food. The first is satiety, and the second is framing. Satiety basically means how satisfied are you when you eat? One of the best things that we can do, and one of the things that I did, was I started to prioritize protein over everything else. Protein is the most satiating of the three macronutrients. Macro, large, nutrient, obviously you get what that is. Proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. The way to think about protein is it's the building block of everything in the body. It not only builds muscle, but it supports other tissue growth, hormone health, and brain functioning. Carbohydrates and energy, they're primary fuel sources for our body. We won't talk about those today. We can talk about those in another video. But today, I want to talk about protein. You see, when you eat more protein, you feel more satisfied. You're also setting your neurotransmitters up so that you function better. Next, I moved from protein to flavor. You see, I'm a big believer that if something is going to be sustainable, it has to taste great. And I'm not talking about tricking yourself that that protein bar, that protein shake, or the quote unquote healthy thing that the nutritionist told you to eat tastes good because you believe that it does. I'm talking about true flavor. I love to eat foods that taste wonderful. And so I experimented with flavor as I continued to go through my journey, and I still do today. Feeling satiated has so much to do with enjoying the flavor and enjoying what you eat. Also, I had to figure out that feeling satiated meant that the timing of my nutrients was important. Just like my client, I figured that eating protein and fats before I consume my carbohydrates, making sure that my fiber and my water intake were high before I added the other fuel sources, was critical to feeling satisfied. Now, let's talk about framing. I believe there's 4 C's when it comes to framing your food. Now, framing is essentially the paradigm that we put food, movement, anything in life into. Food is not binary. It's not just for pleasure or for fuel. Now, if anybody has ever told you eat to fuel yourself, that's great. That's one part of it. But that's not the only thing. And if you're just moving towards pleasure and mental masturbation, or we could even call it mouthful masturbation, then you're still living on this binary. You see, food is much more than just that binary. And here are the 4 C's of food framing: culture, connection, comfort, and clarity. Think about this for a second. Culture. Food is about family. It's about community. It's about tradition. And oftentimes it's about religion. It's the culture that we live in. We eat because the family, the community, the traditions, and the religions educate and are built around food. Second, food is connection. Food gives us time to relax, time with family, time with friends, time with colleagues, and time at sporting events. Eating food is a connective process. Next, food is comfort. We have enjoyment and pleasure. Now, I don't know if you've read the book by David Robson, The Expectation Effect, but when I interviewed David on my podcast, one of the things that really stuck out was how food and how we describe it makes a massive impact in our overall ability to feel the sense of comfort. But there's more. When we feel like the food we're eating is great, it's great tasting, we tend to lose more weight. The science proves it. Next is clarity. Food is all about communication and clarity. You see, the nutrients that we put into our body are the building blocks for the communication in the body. They're the building blocks for the brain cells, the neurons, the muscle cells, the fat cells, the hormones, the hair, skin, and everything else. When we eat to fuel the body, we create clarity of communication in the body, and we're able to function at a very high level. So, When I looked at my food and when I coach my clients on food, these are the two most important pieces that we start with. Now, on to the synergy success strategy. Now, this is something that honestly I don't talk about oftentimes unless someone is already my client because it can come across as a little bit woo woo. And I get that. This might not be for everybody, but I found that this synergy principle works. So just stay with me for a second. There are two of the most powerful forces in the universe. They are love and compounding interest. Again, stay with me. Think about this for just a second. If you love something, then you start to take care of it. You don't have to be motivated to take care of, protect your kids, your spouse, your hobbies, your business, if you love them. If love is there, then you start to take care of those things without massive motivation. When I realized that much of what I was doing for or to my body was out of a lack of love and that I was fighting against my body, I was in this abusive cycle that needed to stop. When I realized that if I showed love to my body, that could create significant healing over time. I started by observing some of the things that were great about my body. And I started to lean into this concept of loving myself. I don't work out because I don't like my body. I work out because I love my body and I love the fact that it can move. I love the fact that when there's something wrong, it sends me the signal of pain. And instead of doing things that were fighting against my body, I started doing things out of love. If I felt pain, I didn't ignore it. I addressed it by getting a massage, doing meditation, or doing some sort of corrective exercise to fix the problem. When I had too much fat, I addressed it by finding foods that energized me and allowed me the satisfaction of eating those foods while giving me the vitality to move well. You see, as soon as we move towards love with our bodies, we move in a better path that's more sustainable. Think about that relative to any other relationship that you have in life. When you move towards something with love, you will take care of that thing far better and it's far more sustainable. Next is compounding interest. Looking at a compound interest calculator, the majority of the significant changes to a portfolio happen several years into the investment. I knew that if I started with one simple change and I compounded it, that multiple times over 10, 20, or 30 years, I would get massive returns. For instance, finding that I was allergic to soy and getting it out of my diet led me to increasing my energy, fixing the majority of my digestive issues, reducing my overall inflammation and pain, and helped me sleep better. I no longer have to worry about joint pain, digestive issues, anxiety, or any of those things because I simply removed something consistently from my diet that was causing a compounding effect in a negative way. On the flip side, I strength train on a regular basis. Doing so has allowed me to be in the best shape of my life at 47 years old by making these small compounding investments. Now, finally, I focused on the priority principle. I started by addressing the thing that was causing the most pain first. Now, if you're like me, you have a hard time just understanding from time to time what the biggest pain is. Maybe it's an emotional pain, maybe it's a mental pain, maybe it's a physical pain. But I started by making a list of all of the things that were causing me problems. And I started by going into the thing that was causing the most pain. For me, that was I was carrying too much body fat. There was a lot of psychological pain. There was a lot of energetic pain. There was the pain of missing out on activities that I wanted to do. And so by addressing the over fatness that I had, that started to make the biggest difference in every other area of life. Now, I have a concept that I use with my clients that I call Big Bang activities. The Big Bang activities are simply an activity that you engage in that makes a massive impact in more than one area of life. For instance, one of the things that I started to do on my weight loss journey is I prioritized movement over everything else. I move every single day. Some days that's simply going for a walk and doing some daily stretching and basic movement practices. Other days, it's a hard workout in the gym. But in order to prioritize the Big Bang activities, you have to identify and understand what the biggest pain point is first. So don't hide from the elephant in the room. Address it first and start there. But more specifically, start with a tactic that can make massive improvements in many areas at once, or a Big Bang activity. For instance, if you were to start slow, progressive strength training, you would increase your muscle mass, you'd improve your metabolism, you would decrease your body fat, you would sleep better, you would improve your hormonal balance, and you would improve all of your longevity markers, and on and on and on. So, what was the net positive? What did I achieve? And what am I still reaping the benefits from by making some of these positive changes? First, I don't have any more extremes in what I do. I don't vacillate, I don't oscillate, and I'm stronger at 47 than I've ever been in my entire life. I maintain under 10% body fat all year long, and I have great energy. Second, I'm conscious about how I eat, and I use food for culture, connection, comfort, and clarity. The family, our friends, they love eating with us because it's always delicious, beautiful, and fun. Additionally, like my client who noticed that eating oatmeal in the morning caused sugar cravings later in the day, I found research from uh, I found research and from my experimentation that if I start my day with a high protein, moderate fat meal, very low to no carbs, I mentally perform better. I have longer energy, and I don't have that midday sugar craving or the dreaded drop in energy. Building my eating around the 4 C's helped me understand my biochemistry, that it was made so that I don't have to have super willpower to, quote, eat healthy. Next, I'm flexible with what I eat, but I have a few specific SOPs that work for me. No dogmatic diet created by someone else. I have my own specific SOPs that I know that work for me. Finally, my overall lifestyle framework is simple and sustainable. I have a regular board meeting. Well, in fact, I have regular board meetings. I snowboard, I wakeboard, I paddleboard with the most important people in my life. I enjoy every activity that I want to. When my wife and I are in Chicago, we hit our favorite gelato shop, one, sometimes 2 times a day, just because it's there. And we're also getting 25,000 plus steps in a day. So it tends to offset. So where do you go from here? If anything here has resonated with you, I want to give you some simple steps. First, rather than a dogmatic diet approach and a prepackaged plan, my consulting services are suited specifically for my clients based on their goals, their lifestyle, and their needs. I offer bespoke coaching that's designed as we go. If you've ever purchased a suit, there are 3 ways to go. There's off the rack, made to measure, and bespoke. When you buy an off the rack suit, you purchase it, you might take it home, maybe you get it altered, and you hope that it fits okay. Made to measure, it's a little more custom. You take some measurements, you send in the measurements to the tailor, and there's a better chance that it's going to fit you well. It's not necessarily custom for you. Bespoke is where everything comes together. It's tailored specifically to your body, the slope of your shoulders, your posture, your waistline, your inseam, the length of your arm. Everything is tailored to you in a bespoke suit. I offer bespoke health and fitness performance consulting for busy executives. It helps them to drop body fat, develop the lean athletic physique that they want, without giving up the foods they love. So if this topic resonated with you, please reach out to me and let's schedule a strategy call to see if we'd be a good fit to work together. So what's in a strategy call, you might be asking? Well, let's talk about what the worst case and the best case scenario is going to be. The worst case scenario is that you and I spend about 45 minutes together and you walk away and say, oh, I spent 45 minutes with an expert in the field, and now I understand what a next step could look like for me so that I don't feel stuck anymore. The best case scenario is that we come to find out that my consulting services are a great fit for you and your goals, and we can start working together so you can see the same results. And maybe you might get to join one of my board meetings one day. Thanks for taking the time with me today. I'm excited to get some time to talk further about where you're at, what your goals are, and how we can help you to achieve your most evolved version of yourself.